Thank you all so much for joining us. And now that we have given our 30 seconds of gratitude, like we do every show, we are going to hop into our guest. We have the lovely Miss Kristie Kennedy Ward. She is an author. She is a pup mom, and her happy place is the beach. Listen, that's my happy place too. If you haven't, if you don't know her, you're going to get to know her today. And so, Kristie, welcome to the Melanin Wellness Podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. How are you on this beautiful day?
Doing very good. So good to be here with you. I am super excited for this divine exchange. I already feel the electricity.
Yes, so do I. So do I. Now, can you tell our listeners just a little bit about your business and why you chose to start your business?
I am the owner of Queenfidence Global Image Consulting, and I have over 20 years of experience ranging from public speaking, model education, day spa servicing as an esthetician by trade. And Karina, at the heart of all of my service, every time I had a conversation with a female, it was something around her confidence. She lacked the confidence, low self-esteem. And I realized I'm beating faces, like beating unto the gods. I am doing all this beautification, but I realized we need to do some deep inner work because you have women who still have not moved beyond childhood trauma. They are afraid to show up fully, as themselves, one, living authentically. There were so many issues that were really preventing them from being who they were created to be. And so I decided to create a company that literally centered around all of those things to help that woman. I often say, look the part, be the part, so she can get the part, whether that's getting married, whether that's stepping into a high profile role in leadership, you name it, whatever she wants, we have to work through those inner fears to be able to possess it because it's her divine birthright.
Absolutely. And I absolutely love that you said you recognize that there are so many of us dealing with like childhood traumas. And that right there is just so real for so many of us. And I touched on shadow work earlier in my series and talked about that and how that's an intricate part of dealing with that childhood trauma and kind of healing ourselves from the inside out. So while you are beating those faces to the gods, tell me, how do you help them to kind of dig in? What does your process look like to dig in on that inside and start to pull out those inner fears that kind of wreck everything that they want to do?
And it's so simple. It starts with an open, honest conversation. When you're in a coaching session, you're in consultation, individuals first, they have to feel safe. And so I
Yes.
make sure that when we create a safe space, so they understand that they're not going to be judged. I'm not here to give you advice and tell you how to live your life, so to speak, but we're going to open up and face those fears. As you mentioned, shadows. First, she has to get comfortable sitting with the shadows. I think that's one of the most uncomfortable things for someone who's been dodging the shadows, running from the shadows of the past, the fears. So let's just sit with what's uncomfortable. That's the starting point.
Yes. Okay. So one topic that I want to get into is the Black Superwoman syndrome. It plagues so many of us. And I'll say this, I do believe that it's something that starts when we're little girls, that we're taught to be strong and to not cry and to not show that inner emotion. So when somebody pushes us down on the playground, we're not supposed to cry. We hop back up like everything's all good, and we turn around and we're ready to fight, right? And we carry that into our adulthood. And a lot of times it can be perceived as the angry Black woman syndrome because we have done this for so long that we become hardened. And then we start to walk more in that masculine energy instead of that feminine piece. Can you touch a little bit on that? I know I touched on so many things.
sister girlfriend, I'm ready to go all the way in on that.
Please go in, sis. Go in.
You are so right. And I love the fact that you brought it from childhood, because we model what oftentimes our mothers have demonstrated without us even knowing. But two, yes, what they have admonished us to be and how to behave. And I specifically remember my mother saying these words, Karina: "You're nothing but a bucket of water." I am empathetic by design. That's how I was created. So at an early age, she was shutting that down, and I had no idea. I can't do this healing work without empathy, but I didn't know at the time. And so I became the angry Black woman. Well, mom just told me you're a bucket of water, so we don't show emotions. And so I became hardened, exactly what you're talking about, fell right into that pattern. And then ultimately you start making decisions from that place. You're the mean girl, no one wants to be your friend, all these different things. And until you sit with your shadows, like, okay, why am I getting the same type of results? Why am I choosing the wrong type of male? All these domino effects from this one thought. And we call those thinking traps. Until you recognize what the thinking trap is in the first place, you won't correct it, because research shows that 98% of our behaviors are driven by our subconscious mind. So this thought was running in the back of my mind: you're nothing but a bucket of water. Who's going to see me vulnerable? Oh, no, you won't. So I'm that strong woman. I'm the powerhouse. Oh, I can deal with power. I got the power, right? So
Right.
I don't know if I'm going to show you when I'm feeling vulnerable and weak. And so I call it fortified femininity, when you are secure enough to show your strength and the soft nature, because they go hand in hand. Before I got married and I was dating my husband, that was one of the first things he brought up in conversation. He was like, "You have a lot of masculine energy." And if he hadn't called me on the carpet, I was unaware of how it was showing up. But I recognized that I needed to make some adjustments if I was going to get this ring.
Right. And you know what? I'm going to tell you, when I realized that I was truly walking in my masculine energy, and this was at the time where I didn't even know what it was. I remember my now 25-year-old son was 17. And he said to me, like, this echoed in my head even to this day. He said, "Mom, when I get older, I want a woman just like you, except I want her to need me for something." Woo! Listen. So that means all those years that I was modeling to him and to my husband and my younger children that I don't need your father. I can do it all myself. And again, I did not realize that I was walking in that masculine energy until he said that. And at the time, it hit me hard, and it continuously echoed in my head. And it wasn't until years later that I started to study and get more deeper into my healing that I realized that all this time I had been in that masculine energy. And I remember sitting and talking with my husband. My husband and I, we've been together 17 years.
Wow.
And yes, oh, thank you.
That's a win in itself.
Yes. And talking to him about it, he would say, yes, there were times where you made me feel emasculated. You made me feel, he said, and it wasn't from a place of malice. It was just, I just figured that that's just the way you were. He said, you are so strong and your presence is so strong that even when you are not speaking, people know that you're there. That's that masculine energy that is carried. And so many of us carry it and don't even recognize it. So what advice would you give to our queens out there that's carrying that strong masculine energy, like how to let that down some and not feel like that, like they're a punk because of it, or that they're weak because of allowing that feminine energy to come into play?
I think about Oprah, Karina. She said, "We get in life what we have the courage to ask for." And at the heart of that statement is vulnerability. It's the asking. There's where the greatest amount of resistance is, because if I ask, hence we get out of that space where we don't need, right? We do need. We need assistance. We need advice. We need support. What is it that you need? And, I start with a prompt. what I need now is, that's the beginning practice. That's where I started. What I need now is, I remember being in a coaching cohort, and that was the first thing the facilitator asked, what is it that you need? And I remember how disconnected I was from my own needs. So how could I even demonstrate vulnerability if I don't even know what I need? So
Right.
it starts with recognizing what you need and then being courageous enough to ask for it, because it's going to feel uncomfortable, but we have to start a practice. Everything is a practice.
Agreed, agreed. And I often wonder like how long many of us carry this. Some of us carry this,
Mhm.
into our 60s and 70s before we really get to that space of awareness and start being willing to ask for what we need. But I think there's also a fear because when you have brought people into your life, when you're in a space of hurt,
Mhm.
and you're afraid to grow and ask for what you need because you're afraid of losing what you already have because they
Mhm.
may not have the capacity to give you what you need when you're asking for it. And so that's a very scary space. So I think a lot of us just become complacent and stay in that space because that's comfortable.
Mhm.
That's
Oh, the
comfortable.
comfort zone. That comfort zone. The
Okay.
death of many dreams are in the
Yes,
comfort
it
zone.
is. And so, speaking of dreams, now you
Mm,
touched earlier on fears.
yeah.
So, I want to now speak to the inner fears of our kings and queens, because we have kings that listen to this podcast as well. So, what tips do you have for them that allow their fears to keep them from stepping into their real true purpose?
Mm, mm, mm. I
I
personally
got some
believe,
questions for you.
I love these questions too. When you think about fear, what does it take to overcome a fear? It's the courage. It's
Mhm.
that willingness that we were talking about. But when someone is petrified, excuse me, they get paralyzed. And so, how do we get out of that fear? One of the fastest ways, Karina, that I believe we move through fears is getting into action.
Mhm.
And something internally has to occur, because we were talking about willingness, but on the opposite side of that is unwillingness. There's the reluctance. It's based upon a mood. Am I in the mood to do something? I hear that often. And so the Latin word for reluctance, that word means struggle. You're going to always struggle unless you're willing to do the thing you're afraid of, because everything that we desire is on the other side of our fears. And so that's why we have to have a vision that's bigger than that valley of fear where the shadows reside.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. And oftentimes I feel like that we're afraid to dream.
Mm,
We're afraid to dream. We were taught we were programmed as kids, many of us, to keep your head down, don't make no
yeah.
waves, don't make too
Mhm.
much noise, so that don't cause no problems,
Yeah.
to just kind of fly under the radar. And so when we have the audacity to dream bigger, it is absolutely petrifying for many of us. Like this right here, what I'm doing right now, petrifying for me. But I did
Mm,
it anyway. So talk to us about that, the audacity to dream and to be scared and doing it anyway.
come on. And I like to touch that because your passion needs to be greater than the petrification. One of my favorite quotes by Jorge Dantes, he said, audacity, more audacity, always audacity, because that's how you overcome the fears. It's that bodacious belief that I often love to sit in. I'm surrounded by 22 vision boards, 6 vision books, because I know that my mindset was often the culprit behind my cowardice. And so
Mm.
I had to get thoughts that were bigger than my
Woo!
doubts and my fears. And so
Yes.
If I wasn't operating the way that I wanted to, okay, let's go back to the drawing board. Let's redesign, because I believe we live by design and not default. If you're on that default setting, remember that old programming, what's going to happen? You're going to keep showing up in that way. So I began to design, who is Kristie? She is bold. She's a lioness. She is fierce. All those different the new language, right? So my behavior can match. And then you have congruence. What's happening is many individuals, they're out of alignment with who they really want to be. They're not thinking in alignment with that bold self, and they're not behaving in alignment. And so they keep getting those same results, which leads to frustration.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Listen, I am all about the affirmations, the vision boards, the excuse me, the manifesting what you say you want. Because at some point you have to reprogram your mind. And sometimes reprogramming your mind can be scary, because that means you have to break down all of the lies you were taught, who you believed that you were, to rebuild yourself as you should be, so you can walk into that purpose. Now, I heard you touch on your vision boards and your books. I want you to talk to us a little bit about those vision boards and those vision books. And where can we find these?
Yes, they're in my home. So these are my personal things that I do to build myself up.
Okay.
I believe you have to have a vision. It's just imperative, especially if you're a visionary leader, like doing something that's never been done before. You're the forerunner, you're the trailblazer, you're the pioneer of your family. I believe that you need to have thoughts that support you on those days when you start questioning your ability, you start questioning your capacity, because leadership is extremely demanding.
Yes,
And
it
so
is.
I started with the vision book, and I love vision books, Karina, because they're mobile. So if I travel, I can take a vision book with me. And then the vision boards, they're huge, as you know, and they're all on the wall. But when I started the vision boards, I remember, it was 2015. I was laid off my last quote unquote job as an esthetician in the medical spa. And I remember my supervisor saying, "Why are you here?" We were asking the question, "Why are you here? We saw your website. We saw all these different things." I was always playing it small, discounting my gifts, not being too afraid to share them, just living out loud as a dominant introvert. And so that's when I went vision board crazy. When they laid me off, I started with 2 pink vision boards, and I've just been designing ever since, because I keep expanding, I keep evolving, I keep enlarging within myself. People think it's all about you get the money first, but no, you grow first. You become wealthy first before anything comes to you. That magnetic force that you bring to you, and those are your thoughts. Your thoughts are creating your future. Your thoughts are creating your reality.
Yes, I tell my children all the time, act as if. And that's a little sticker. So if you want to be a millionaire, act as if you already are. Whatever it is that you want to be, act as if, because that's you subtly and not subtly telling the universe what is going to happen, and it will manifest. Because I'm going to tell you, I did a vision board at the end of 2021, and I put a microphone on that vision board. I had no idea where I really wanted it to go. I just knew I wanted to be in a speaking capacity, and here we are.
Come on, it works, people. Work it.
Manifestation works. So,
does.
Kristie, tell me, if somebody wants to work with you, tell me how they can do that. How can they find you? How can they reach out to you?
Absolutely. They can go to queenfidence.com or kristiekennedy.com. QUEENFIDENCE, queenfidence.com, or my name, kristiekennedy.com. You'll find an application, because I don't work with any and everybody. It's
That's right.
Girl got skills and she got bills, but I'm telling you, I believe it's imperative that I have the right match, because coaching is, it's a divine relationship, and everybody can't pick up what you're putting down. I've learned that over the years.
Yes, everybody's energy don't match your energy. And that's why you have to be so mindful about who you work with and who you align with, because you don't want to have an energy that does not align with yours attaching to yours, because then you're carrying that whole energy with you. So thank you so much. This was so powerful for me. And I know that it's going to be powerful for our listeners. Thank you all so much for joining us again on the Melanin Wellness Podcast. I am so grateful for you. All of Kristie's contact information, all her socials will be in the description of this episode. Thank you again. I love you to the moon and back, family. We will see you guys in the next episode of the Melanin Wellness Podcast. Until then, live well.
Live well.